Let's divide horror movie scares into five broad categories: monster, demon, vampire, human, and ghost. The monster and human are the most tangible things, right? Actual physical things. Vampire, too, though I almost said vampire is a type of monster because it is physical, but I separated it out from monster because vampires tend to be more of a force of culture than a force of nature. The demon could be a monster in form, but usually is a possessor trying to enter a human and control them for evil, kind of like a mecha pilot in a soft meat getup. But the ghost, like, what do you do with the ghost? Because the thing about ghosts is that they're really freaky, but ultimately can't harm you. I suppose you could point me to Poltergeist, but that's almost more demon or monster in its general ethos. Ghosts themselves, to me, are just imprints of humans. And while they might give you the willies and keep you up at night, they aren't really always the hugest threat, like making weird noises, slinking in shadows. I mean, ghosts are kind of just spooky cats when you examine their core behavior. But I suppose in short form storytelling, you can make that pretty scary, though I think it's hard to keep it going for long. When the TV series The Haunting of Hill House, based on Shirley Jackson's masterpiece of a novel, came up a few years back, we were all shook by those first few episodes. But as the show went along, we learned more about the ghosts and who they are and what they want, and the imagery became less and less terrifying. The show is still compelling, it just became less scary. In fact, this very notion is explained clearly in Robert Wise's 1963 film adaptation of that same novel. In The Haunting, Dr. Markaway tells Nell that we are afraid of the unknown, that which we cannot see or comprehend, the preternatural. But what was once unknown to one generation becomes commonplace to the next. Sorry, I have a stampede of cats, speaking of spooky ghost animals. The incredible feat of The Haunting is being scary and tense without ever once showing us a ghost. Not one single time. Robert Wise understood Dark Robert Wise understood Dr. Markaway's lecture very well. Stay in the unknown, don't explain too much. I mean, until the very end, then do a plot dump and immediately go to credits. Hi, Cecil.
Hi, Jeffrey.
How do you like your martini?
I like my martini with a very dirty.
Oh, you like an olive juice dump in there.
Yeah, I'm one of those. I'm like, give me that briny deliciousness.
Gin or vodka?
A vodka, please.
Vodka, please, because the gin's gonna compete with the olive juice in that. The vodka's gonna
Yeah.
take all
Also,
of that
like I
briny
was just
flavor.
never a huge gin guy. It took
Totally.
me many years to realize I would think I was just drinking the wrong kind of gin for me.
Hmm.
I didn't want to feel like I was just like sucking on a juniper tree. And then I was like, oh, there's other gins that I do enjoy. But in vodka or in martini form, yeah, dirty vodka martini.
I always tell people who are gin averse, speaking of horror averse in this
Hmm.
podcast, but people who are gin averse, which I totally understand. I do think we often grab Beefeater or Tanqueray or Bombay or whatever, and those are kind of standard go-to shelf gins. But if you ever go to like a local distillery.
Sure.
Yeah, if you ever go to some place that makes their own alcohol, like small batch sort of thing, get their gin because they're most likely making some type of bathtub gin. It's just going to be full of
Oh,
a lot more flavor. It's a thing where you can
ooh,
like, it's going to go really well with your seltzer and spritz of orange or lime or whatever you
yeah.
throw into it. And I think it's going to be way less junipery
Hmm.
than the Beefeater London Dry gins that you get.
Sure.
So that would be my recommendation, and it's gonna be cheap because gin is just flavored vodka, is basically it.
Oh, there you go. I had a friend who would wear this cologne that was essentially like a juniper flavored cologne or
Whoa.
perfume, eau de parfum.
Uh-huh.
And man, it was one of those things where I'm like, I love you, but every time I go to hug you, I feel like I'm just like soaking in booze, which I think was actually why he liked that cologne.
Sure. Makes him seem like he's some like 19th century Londoner
Yes, yes.
stumbling out of the pub.
Uh-huh.
All right, so we're gonna talk about The Haunting. We
The
got to this.
haunting.
We
You have to
got
say it
to
like that because
we
it's a
oh,
black and white spooky.
it is a black and white spooky. We got to The Haunting by Rolling Haunted
Yeah.
meets
Check.
LGBTQ plus characters and or
Yes.
creator, and we get this with Theo.
Here's the thing. I think it's really amazing and important to go back and watch movies that have LGBT characters in them, kind of post Stone or pre Stonewall. There's like,
Hmm.
in my mind, there's kind of a pre Stonewall and a post Stonewall. Like, and those, it's not necessarily exact, but I think it's around this time where like we do start to see more LGBT characters,
Hmm.
but the way in which they're presented, I think, is much is has to be so subtle and so subverted into these movies. And I think it's really good to go back and remember kind of the history of back when we couldn't just say, I'm leaving my girlfriend,
Uh-huh.
when everything was kind of implied and underneath the surface.
I'm going back to like the documentary The Celluloid Closet, but so
Yeah.
much like pre 1980s
Yeah.
films, especially like in the Code era
Yeah.
and the Hollywood Code era, we had filmmakers, especially like closeted gay writers and
Yeah.
directors, who were building gay characters through subtle commentary, right? It's
Sure.
very, very subtle. And Theo in The Haunting is essentially, at no point in time do they say, I'm a lesbian, I'm dating a woman. Like, they do not say those
Yeah.
phrases, but everything about her character, the way she looks and talks to Nell, is absolutely, it's not even coded lesbian at that point. It's
Yeah.
like your behavior is
Yeah.
you're attracted to women. And I think the other thing that happened a lot of times in this era, like when you think about like movies like The Children's Hour or something like that, wherein gay
Hmm.
characters have to die, you have to kill your
Yeah.
gays, uh, if they were openly gay in any form, fashion. And in this movie, we have a character who is gay, who is strong and of
Yeah.
herself, and is survives, right? Like
Yeah.
moves through this movie and is going to go back to her pretty solid life.
It's interesting. I found out that there was in one draft of the script, there was a scene in which we see Theo at home before she gets to the Hill House.
Mhm.
And apparently she had gone through a breakup and like someone had written in lipstick on the mirror, I hate you. So it was like even more, like it was very apparent that she was leaving her like female lover, or her
Yeah.
female lover had left her more specifically. But they had eventually said, you know what, this movie is all about subtleties. Let's just, cut that.
Uh-huh.
And I think they did such an amazing job of just putting it in the performances, in the writing.
There's I told you right before we started, kind of did a quick reread of the book last week,
Sure.
which I hadn't read in years. And it's really interesting that I found that the movie, maybe because we get actors performing things out for us,
Sure.
and maybe it's Claire Bloom's contribution to this film that makes the character even gayer in the movie than in
Oh
the book.
yeah.
It's way subtler in the book.
Okay.
Though we do know that she is an actress and a performance artist, and living in the, I think, East Village or
She's
whatever.
bohemian.
She's so bohemian. The other thing is when Grace, when Dr. Markaway's wife, in the book it's Dr. Montague, when Dr. Montague's wife shows up at the end of the story in the book, she brings along with her, she does not stay in the same room as her husband, and she brings along with her just her companion, which is another man, who
Oh.
they just go off and do their fucking fun things. And it's
Oh.
never really explained what the relationship is, if they sleep in the same room, what's happening there.
Uh-huh.
And so I found it interesting that they removed that, because that's a way more complicated thing, I think,
Yeah,
for
sexual
audiences.
ambiguity all around.
Yes. So, tiny hat tip to you, Miss Shirley Jackson.
I love Shirley Jackson so much. We
Hmm.
were talking about Shirley Jackson before, and I spent actually just this past summer, I just read a book of her short stories because I'd only ever read like one or two,
Right.
and man, I gotta say, after like they go pretty quick.
Uh-huh.
Took me a few weeks to, I'd kind of like read one every night before bed.
Mhm.
And man, I found myself getting like crazy paranoid after reading Shirley Jackson, because everything, the scenes that in this movie that to me feel the most Shirley Jackson are the ones with Mrs. Dudley.
Oh yeah. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
You know, sort of the harbinger. You have your classic harbinger characters,
Uh-huh.
but she's like, Pepperidge Farm remembers that there's no one to hear you scream in the dark, in the night. And it's just like that repeating of those words over and over. I was like, this is the most Shirley Jackson thing ever.
Mm-hmm.
Because she's saying everything without saying anything at all, which to me
Yeah.
is very Shirley Jackson.
Well, let's start at the beginning and we get the voiceover. This book, the novel, is well regarded as one of the greatest opening paragraphs
Oh
in
yeah.
English language literature of all
I
time. I
mean, I
encourage
know
you.
it because of your love of it
Mm-hmm.
and its inclusion in a couple of Night Vale scripts, live scripts, if I remember right.
We've taken some variation on it through and through. I think even in the attic we use some variation of that. But it's such a beautiful paragraph and I encourage you to go just do a search for it. We won't read it here, but they do change it and I was sort of
Sure.
sad at the beginning that they took little bits of it and I guess they're trying to truncate. They just want like 3 sentences, not five,
Yeah.
to
Yeah.
open the movie. But it gets the vibe, which is it's an evil house, the kind some would call haunted. An evil house is like an undiscovered country waiting to be explored. Hill House had stood for 90 years and might stand for 90 years more. Whatever walked there, walked alone.
Ooh.
So good.
What walks there? What?
The
What? Tell me, Ms. Jackson.
according to this movie, like nothing. It's more just that the house is insane.
Yeah.
That the house is a living creature.
Yeah. I love that idea.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, in a lot of ways, this almost isn't a haunting. This is about them entering a creature of a species we don't know of. Evil
Sure.
house as a
Yeah.
species. So this is the voice of Dr. John Markaway. He's an archaeologist living in New England somewhere, and he talks a little bit about how this house was built 90 years ago, so in the mid 19th century. And it was built by a man named Hugh Crane for his new
Oof.
bride.
Oof.
Hugh
Oh.
Crane.
Yep.
It was an evil house from the beginning because Hugh's wife was taking a carriage on her way up the hill to the house. The horses freaked the fuck out and then just ran her into a tree and killed her.
Yeah. Before she didn't even get to see the house.
She did not. That house did not want Mrs. Crane the
Yeah.
first. Well, Hugh remarried. Oh, I'm sorry. Before he remarried, we meet his
He's got a little
daughter
daughter.
He's got a little daughter Abigail.
Abigail. Oh my God. This scene is so where like the cadaver of the mother is like laid out on the sofa and he's like reading from his like creepy Bible thumper fire
Uh-huh.
and brimstone book and he like forces his daughter to look at the mom. I think
Yeah.
that I'm like, okay, I think we understand where this story is going.
Yeah. It's such a nice glimpse story-wise to see Hugh Crane do that because we'll learn a little bit more about his relationship to religion, the occult, like the book he was writing for his daughter that they find in the
Yeah.
library later. I'm like, what is wrong with you?
I
You're
mean,
either a super scary dad or a super cool dad because I would have liked that book when I was a
I
kid.
mean, it's all like William Blake paintings that were just sort of like, you know, gothed up, like,
Yes.
gored up. But it's also the like suffer the little children inscriptions that are everywhere and the like honor thy mother and father inscriptions that are everywhere. He definitely went hard into one of those commandments.
Uh-huh. Well, he remarries, and his second wife like is also the house is being weird to her, and
Yeah.
it spooks her, and she falls backwards down the stairs and dies
Oh,
at the bottom of the stairs. Hugh then left for to Hugh then hold on just a second. Hi, you're being evicted. Yeah, I know.
meow, meow, meow.
You're making too much noise. Say hi to your
Oh,
house.
it's kitty with murder in its eyes.
Let's see how long that lasts.
That cat had pure murder in its eyes.
he is. I dare say he's turned his dirtbagness up to 11 at this age, but
Yeah.
I don't
Uh-huh.
know how high dirtbag can go on
It
this
could
cat.
go up infinitely.
So Hugh left Abigail at the house to go to England for work and left her with the nurse, but
Uh-huh.
then he drowns
He just
while he's
dies.
in England.
Yeah.
Abigail, just as she aged, she just stayed in the same nursery from age
Yeah.
8 to 80.
Yeah. Like in the same bed. It literally the film is like this woman just never recovered from this early childhood trauma of seeing her mother die.
No, this is certainly a movie about mental illnesses and mental disorders that come from
Sure.
trauma
Oh
because
yeah.
we
And
tie
especially
Nell's story
family
to this.
family trauma.
Hmm. And then okay, let's see. Oh, old Abigail had hired
Yeah.
a young townie from
Hmm.
wherever, Greenfield, Massachusetts, wherever we're
Yeah.
at,
Okay.
and had hired a townie to come take care of her, to be her companion, right? Like to give her medicines and food and
Yeah.
whatever else. Well, kind of in the spirit of Friday the 13th, the one,
Yep.
this girl sneaks out one night to go do some making out on the veranda with a handsome young stranger. And she does not hear the old woman calling for help, and the old woman dies in her
That
bed.
woman is like banging her heavy cane on the wall.
Uh-huh.
I was like, couldn't get like a little tiny bell or anything? No, going for the giant knocking cane, but we're going to hear that knocking later, Jeffrey.
Oh my God, the knocking. People believe the young woman murdered Abigail because the young
Hmm.
woman then moved into the house, took over the house.
Yeah.
And they were like, oh, she totally murdered the old lady and took her house. Well, that didn't last long because the young woman then hangs herself from the top of the stairwell in the library tower.
Yep.
So now the house falls to another old woman, a niece of Abigail named Mrs. Sanderson. And this is Dr. Markaway coming to see Mrs. Sanderson, being like, hey, can I rent your family's house? Because I want to do studies on the occult, not the occult, on haunted houses.
Yeah.
And she's a little bit,
Mrs.
oh, yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, Mrs. Sanderson is I like Mrs. Sanderson because she's definitely like understands the house, doesn't want anything to do with she's like, I don't want any fuckery, I don't want any publicity. Very, very old school New England. She's like, we're gonna keep everything under wraps, but I don't live there. I don't want to. Nope, 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 nope.
No, no. And like, I think in a more modern version of the film, she would have them sign waivers and
NDAs.
NDAs.
Yeah,
Yep. Yep. I guess you can't sign an NDA because he's trying to write a paper on it, but
sure.
you could maybe control how he talks about the house.
It's all very, let's keep this hush hush.
Yes. He's going to hire assistants to kind of help him uh journal all of their experiences
Hmm.
and things that happen in there. She suggests sending or her assistant is like, why don't we send your nephew Luke along? He seems to be an aimless young chap who
Yes,
doesn't know what
yes,
to do with his
indeed.
life and will eventually inherit the house. Maybe it will be good for him to see what is in the house before he inherits it.
Yeah. Okay, okay. Sounds like
This
a plan.
She even warns him. She was like, "Listen, don't play cards with Luke. He is a
Yeah.
card sharp. He will fuck you up at poker and any other game."
Which is a gag that literally that pays off so hard later in
Yes,
this movie.
so good. Okay, so that's the situation with Dr. Markaway. Now we're gonna meet Eleanor, known as Nell. And Nell is, well, here at home she's Eleanor, but Eleanor Lance. She is begging her brother and sister, I need to borrow mom's car. In fact, it's not even mom's car. I paid for half of it.
It's our car.
It is our car, just like this house. I paid for half of this house. Why am I sleeping on the fucking couch? But she's
Yeah.
not that assertive.
Yeah.
She's at the bottom rung of the confidence ladder in her
Oh
family.
yeah. Like even even their child like is like a dick to
Yes.
Eleanor.
Yeah. Her brother is outwardly kind, but reductive to her.
Yeah.
And her sister is just a straight up horrible human being
Yeah.
to her. Her
Now, is it
sister,
brother and
oh,
it's like, is it like sister and
it
brother-in-law?
might be brother-in-law. I think you're right. I think it's
Okay.
brother. I think
Because it
sister
took me
and
a minute to
brother-in-law.
get, well, I was like, what is this family dynamic here?
Yeah.
Because other than just like everybody let's hate on Eleanor, it's a little hard to tell what's going on here.
Yeah.
But it's also very indicative of the sort of like father knows best. The man controls everything, and his wife just sort of puts in snide comments to get her way. And it's very clear that Eleanor is like has to escape
Yeah.
this family dynamic.
We'll learn later kind of what's behind her sister's dynamic is that similar to old Abigail and her
Yeah.
young assistant, uh, Eleanor was in charge. Nell was in charge of taking care of mother. I don't know what sister was doing in all of this, but
Right?
Nell was like the caretaker,
Yeah.
and
For
Nell
11 years.
and
11 years.
her mom would pound on the wall when she needed something, and Nell had to jump to attention. And one night she did not jump right away because she was so sick and tired of it. And
Yeah.
then her mom died that night. And so her
Guilt.
sister
Guilt.
blames Nell, like, you killed
Because
our mother.
even though the sister was doing what? Just being married? The sister was bringing up a nuclear family. That was her job,
Right.
as opposed to actually doing the work of taking care of the parent.
Yeah. Her sister like burns her bad with I suppose mother's wishes don't mean much to you, do they? Jesus Christ, like, dial it down.
Yeah, right.
Well, Nell sneaks out and then takes the car anyway
I love this.
without
I
telling
lo- uh,
anyone.
yeah, and this is the beginning of the Eleanor voiceover,
Yes.
which I love this
Mm-hmm.
because this is the difference to me between like kind of a schlocky horror movie and like an intellectual horror movie is because we get this it's very much based on a novel, and this is a great way to adapt a novel to film, because in novels we get characters' inner thoughts all the time, but it's like so much more difficult to do that in film, where everything
Yeah.
is kind of like he said, she said, boom, boom, boom. What are they doing rather than what are they thinking?
Yeah. Shirley Jackson had said when Robert Wise and I'm forgetting his name, the screenwriter, went to meet with her to talk to her about this film adaptation, they originally were going to play very heavily in the notion that we don't know if Hill House is even real. Like, maybe the
Yeah,
house
yeah, yeah,
is
yeah,
real, but that everything was completely in her mind. And I
yeah.
do feel like the novel wants you to think that for a little
To
bit.
question
But
Eleanor's sort of perceptions.
Shirley Jackson told them, she was like, "Oh no, it is supernatural. Like, my intention that is like,
It's a haunted fucking house.
Nell is dealing with some shit, and she's got some problems
Hmm.
to work through, but
Sure.
no, the house is real and everything that happens in it is real. That's really happening. So but you're right, the voiceover is really interesting because it gives us a thought, just a pretty simple movie device to give us a
Yeah.
glimpse into their inner thoughts. She's like, I'm really going. They'll never have suspected this of me. I'm a new person. And, she's kind of narrating all of her inner thoughts. But as the movie goes on, those thoughts become a lot more like, oh, I think she's going through some dissociation, is what's
Yeah.
happening.
Like they become very disjointed.
Hmm. She passes on her way to the house. She passes an estate with giant stone lions out front, and it says "to let." And so
Hmm.
she kind of imagines herself living someplace other than at her family's
Yeah.
house. And this is the beginning of her being kind of set on, I didn't leave to go to Hill House. I left to leave. I
Yeah.
don't want to live at home
Yeah.
anymore.
But she doesn't quite know what that would be or what that would look like. She's like, what if I just kept driving forever until
Yeah,
I fell off the end of the earth?
amazing. She gets there before everyone else, and we meet Mr. Dudley, the
Oh, Mr.
groundskeeper,
Dudley.
and we're gonna meet his wife, Mrs. Dudley. He's the groundskeeper, she's the housekeeper,
Yep.
basically.
Classic pairing.
Yes, totally. Uh, he's definitely trying to warn her off through rudeness.
Yeah.
And, hat tip to him. Good job. He probably should warn her off. Maybe a little more directness, but he's doing his best. And he basically says, "You'll be sorry I ever opened the gate." And she drives up to that house. We see this glorious, but also real spooky looking old mansion.
Yeah.
And her first thing that she thinks to herself is, "It's staring at me. It's vile."
Yeah. I love that word, vile.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, this house is definitely full of character.
Mm-hmm.
All the interiors were done on a sound stage for this film, but they found this house somewhere in England, and I mean, it is towers and gargoyles and friezes and um, too much to look at, one could
Mm-hmm.
say.
Yeah.
The interior is even more so.
It is a lot. There's constant commentary throughout this early part of the movie about how hideous everything is, which is great. I mean, we can see it ourselves, but in a black and white film, we
Yeah,
don't
I
fully get
know.
how gaudy everything might be.
I feel like this is what Darker Than Night wanted to do with their house,
Uh-huh.
you know?
You're totally right. I thought about Darker Than Night as well watching this. Okay, we're gonna meet Mrs. Dudley, who first off just kind of opens the door and doesn't say a
Silent,
word.
silent.
She walks her up to Nell's like, I need my room. And so she walks her to her room. And then Mrs. D starts in on her spiel, which she has
I love
down
this.
pat.
My
Dinner's at
God.
6, breakfast is at 9. I don't wait for people. I don't stay after dark. We live in town. We couldn't hear you in the night, in the dark. Big smile.
No one can hear you in the dark, in the night. No one from town. No one from town could hear you. No one from town comes here in the dark, in the night.
I wish I had transcribed her whole speech because I
Oh my
just
God.
want that. Now I'm like, do Mrs. Dudley for Halloween and just recite this wherever I go?
Absolutely. Absolutely. And then answer your door to trick-or-treaters.
Uh-huh.
No one
Yeah.
can hear you scream. One candy apiece. In the dark, in the night. Have a Snickers.
Now we meet Theodora Theo.
Uh, snaps.
Just
This
the best.
oh my God. Like, so I had seen this movie before. I
Hmm.
think I saw this movie like when I was in like my teens or 20s, something like that. And even then, my little gay heart was like, this bitch.
Yes.
Because oh my God. I mean, one, I mean, I love the beatnik era. Like I love, like it's very much like Theodora has her own dresser. If you notice in the credits, Claire Bloom has her own fucking,
Uh-huh.
and they kind of wanted to make her seem like a foil to Eleanor, who is fragile, sheltered, cloistered, and Theodora is a woman of the world.
Uh-huh. Well, she's got leopard print and boa
Yes.
and a beret, and Mrs. D is running through her spiel again, but it's very funny that Theo is just kind of like,
Just,
okay.
yeah,
And
just
then
like
talking to
whatever.
Nell.
Yeah, just runs right over her. I love it. You can kind of see the consternation in poor Miss Dudley's face. She's like, I'm trying to scare the fuck out of you. Just listen to me talk. No? Goodbye. Yeah, Theodore is having none of it.
No. And the way she looks at Nell is so, I mean, because it's so hard to describe, but it's never like lustful.
No.
It's interesting. It's first date eyes.
Yeah.
As in like everything you're saying, I am super engaged with you.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
I really want this conversation to go well. And so there's a combination of desire, but also intrigue.
Intrigue. I mean, it's
Yeah.
it's also the fact that Theodora is psychic.
Yes.
So she has this like mesmerism kind of like she has these like penetrating eyes. And I think that's where the script of this kind of skirts around the sort of the homosexual nature of this film because it's never said and so it can always be written off as oh well someone like you
Yes.
which I'm sure any queer person knows exactly what the fuck they're talking about, but it's
Uh-huh.
someone like you, meaning unnatural, like a psychic, or, like it's implied that, but I think everybody kind of knows what's going on there.
Yeah. Nell is excited to meet another woman and just another person
Just not to be alone in this
not
fucking house.
and to meet somebody who seems delightful and interested in her. And so she's like, "Oh, we're going to be such good friends." And
Yes. Like sisters.
like sisters? Theo asks. Uh they get lost trying to find their way to the back downstairs and through the house. Like the house does this to
Yeah.
people, and it closes doors, it confuses you. It seems to imply that it can maybe change shape all the time.
Yeah, I love it.
Hmm. There's a moment where Nell is like, "There's something with us. It's the house. It is
Yeah.
alive." And and Theo is walking off, and Nell is like, "Don't let me go, Theo. Stay with me." And suddenly the door opens, and here comes Dr. Markaway.
All right.
Hmm.
This Dr. Markaway. I mean, I like Dr. Markaway. Don't get me wrong.
Totally.
I mean, like, it's just, I question some of his just his the way he treats Eleanor is a little suspect.
Uh-huh.
It's a little like, again, she little daddy knows best.
He does that right to Theo when she was like, he makes kind of a joke, and she's like, "Oh, don't be ghoulish." And he's like, "Well,
Yeah.
it's not ghoulish. I mean, the
Ghoulish
definition of
actually means
ghoulish is,"
this.
and we're
And
like, "Oh, come
going,
on."
okay. All right.
Uh, we also meet, we go to the Purple Parlor, their center
The
of
purple parlor. Oh
operations.
my God. Absolutely.
He points out that there's not a square corner in the whole place. The doors were aligned weird so that they all kind of like open and shut all the time.
Who does what?
What?
And
Uh,
it's implying that this is like this house was built to be evil,
yes.
to reflect, what's his face? Was it Eldritch Harper?
Eldridge Harper.
No,
Uh,
the guy who the man who built the house. What was his name?
oh, the actual builder of the house,
Yeah.
not Hugh Crane, but
Oh, Ukraine. Sorry,
Hugh
the
Crane. Yeah,
Ukraine.
yeah.
Yeah.
So we meet Luke finally, young man,
Yeah.
Russ Tamblyn from West Side Story.
Yeah. Fresh off a West Side Story, but
Yep.
pre Dr. Jacoby.
Which was West Side Story also Robert Wise? Did I get that right?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So he shows up with his big round baby face and
Hmm.
curly
And
hair.
his like sort of Ivy League jacket.
He is so modern day bro, like
Yeah.
the epitome of
Oh, yeah.
Labrador Retriever puppy.
Yep.
He is fascinated by how much this house is worth and how much it could go
Hmm.
for.
Sure.
He is not
He's
anything to do with spirits or ghostly things. He is a very
no.
practical man getting his MBA at wherever the fuck he's off to college, Kansas or some shit. So he's stirring up martinis, and all I wrote was use more ice, asshole. Like there's barely any ice. You are watering that down so much. Markaway says that all the other participants bailed. He had a whole bunch of people planned, but a lot of people did their research and were like, absolutely not. I'm not coming there.
I know.
These two women did not do any research and were like, well, I don't give a fuck. They both seem to be kind of escaping maybe some variation of
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
change in their lives.
Sure.
So they probably were just like, you know what? This will just be nice. I bet it'll be better than where I am now.
Okay. So, Jeffrey, let's say Dr. Markaway comes up to you and they're like, hey, I'm doing research on paranormal houses.
Hmm.
I found the most evil house in the world. We want you to spend a couple nights there indefinitely, be a research assistant. Would you do it?
Maybe. I think it depends. Well, to the point of these two women, it depends on like what's happening in my life right now. Do I have time
Sure.
for doing like what compensation do I get? Like and maybe there's no
Oh,
money
yeah.
involved, but is there something that I get from this sort of thing?
Yeah.
I'd be pretty curious. I would have a lot more safeguards. Like I would be like, "Hey, Mr. and Mrs. Dudley, at night, don't fucking lock the gate."
Yeah. I want to be able to
Because
leave whenever the fuck I want.
Yeah, I would already have, like I would do research on, like, where it is, how close it is to town and society.
You'd have an escape plan.
And I
Yeah.
would absolutely have an escape plan.
Like have a little bag ready to go.
I would have a go bag 100%. Yes. What about you? Would you do that?
I think I would.
Yeah.
I mean, I'd be it would be hard for me, like if somebody said, "Hey, we're researching haunted houses." I think for me is the difference between would I have looked into the story of Hill House first versus going in cold like Eleanor and Theodora and well, not Luke, because Luke knows. I think he's heard all the stories, right? But he doesn't believe them.
I think
I
so.
think
Yeah.
that would be the difference for me. If I was just being like, "Hey, we're researching haunted houses, come stay at this house," I'd be like, "Yeah, why not?"
Yeah.
And I think honestly, even if I did hear the stories, be like, "Oh, some people died there." Well, you know what? People die all over the place
Yeah.
in this world. You just don't know about them.
Yeah. Well, we learned that they picked these two he picked these two women because Theo was an ESPN champ.
Yep.
She got 19 out of 20 cards right in that test, which is very impressive.
Like a double blind pick the card test. Yeah.
Yeah. And then Nell, when she was like 10 years old, had a poltergeist experience of showers of stones falling on her house for like 3 days.
Yeah. Which is weird enough. But
Yeah.
Eleanor's reaction to this story is like even stranger.
At no point in time does Eleanor ever make me comfortable because she
No.
is. Sh we have all met this person and known this person. And I think for everyone else in that house, there's a lot of like, oh, we have one of these
Yeah.
people.
Yeah.
But she's like, it never happened. It didn't happen like that. No, that's not, it's not true. And he's like, your reality is, you know your truth. He's trying
You
to
know,
be
we talked
gentle.
to neighbors, we talked to members of your family. They all 100% said yes. But you know what? That's okay. The
I think that,
conversation continues.
yes, Luke is like, well, I've talked to the mayor of the town
Yeah.
believes that actually the disturbances at Hill House are caused by subterranean water, that causes a shifting in the soil. And then Nell's like, mother says neighbors threw the rocks.
Oh,
Record scratch.
okay, Nell. We're going back to this. How are you doing over there, sweetie?
Well, her mother died just 2 months ago.
Uh, and that is new information
Yes.
because we know that mother's death happened sometime in the past, but 2 months, that is like in the process of grieving, that is like nothing,
Mm-mm.
you know?
Mm-mm. And especially, it sounds like this is a mother who trained her daughter to take care of her.
Oh yeah.
And so like that conflicting emotion of I need mother, I need away from mother, I need
Yeah.
mother.
Yeah.
And then now living with the sister who blames her and everything else, it's just like there's so much she's got to work through beyond just the
Oh yeah.
sorrow and the the sadness and the loss. Theo says you weren't sorry when she died, though, were you?
God. That is such a fucking power move.
Boy, it is. It really, really is. Later that night, here's where we get your payoff on how good Luke is at cards. Because Nell is having a moment where she's sitting on the couch away from everyone, but in her
Yeah.
mind, she's telling herself, these people are my friends. I belong here. I
I
finally
belong
belong
here.
with
I've been waiting
somebody.
for this house my whole life.
And the
I've been waiting to
visual is
be
so
part
good
of something.
because she's not part of the group. She's sitting by
No.
herself.
Yeah.
But in the background, Luke is yelling at Theo, being like, "You cheated! You're I don't know." She's like, "You owe me $12."
Yeah. Oh, I love it when the cheater gets cheated. She's like, well, if you wouldn't stop cheating, I wouldn't have to use my ESP to know what cards you had. And even then, go up to your room and get my money. Which again is like this sort of uncoded, like coded, uncoded, like a woman that's able to like actually gonna call like young frat boy out on his bullshit.
Uh huh.
Lesbian.
Yeah.
Lesbian.
Well, later that night, uh, she, Theo tells Nell they're in adjoining rooms. She says, "If you're feeling the least bit nervous, come running right into my room, Nell."
Mhm.
And
You know
then,
what? Actually, come into my room. I would, I think your hair would look so good. Let me do your hair.
yeah.
No,
And
you tired? Okay, maybe
all right.
tomorrow.
Well, and we have a date for breakfast, right? Tomorrow morning.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. First night in the house, Nell wakes up to a pounding sound. And she, from her dream, thinks this is her own mother because that's how
Yeah,
her mother signaled her. But she realizes, no, it's coming from this house.
yeah.
And she runs into Theo's room. They both hear it. They
Oh,
both
thank
look,
God.
thank God.
See, this is one of those where like I'm so glad. And this is where like having these characters that are complicated, but not evil, like nobody's out to fool another character. Like because the terror that both Nell and Theo are experiencing are both very real to them. So we don't get the like this is all in Eleanor's head. We don't have to do that sort of song and dance. I mean, we do kind of do that song and dance a little bit later, but I think it's Theo that's like, what the fuck is happening? Like, and it's really interesting seeing a character that is so strong be unnerved.
Yeah. Yeah, we need that. We need Theo looking scared. We need
Yeah.
later
Because
we
Eleanor's
need
kind of scared of her own shadow.
yeah.
But if Theo's scared, then something very terrible is going on.
And
Same
if
thing with Luke later on
Luke,
in the
yeah,
film.
when Luke drops the brandy bottle
Hmm.
in fright, you're like, "Oh, well, shit's gone crazy if this
Yeah.
dumbass is
Yeah. Yeah.
scared." So the clomping, the pounding sound, which is
Yeah.
so interesting because it's very much like sounds like an echoey hall far away with somebody banging like a rod on
Yeah.
a wooden wall. But the rhythm of it also sounds like a heartbeat too. Like the
Oh,
rhythm of it
yeah. Oh, I didn't get that. Yeah. Yeah.
has
Yeah.
kind of a heartbeat sort of thing. I only thought that later in the movie when he talked about this is sort of the heart of the house right here
Oh,
where this
yeah.
chill
Oh,
is.
good catch.
Well, the pounding comes all the way to their door, and the doorknob we can see kind of like
Is this the
turning.
first of the doorknob turn?
Uh-huh.
I don't know. I mean, I don't think this is probably not the first movie to do this, but this is definitely like the most effective of like something is at the door,
Uh-huh.
doorknob turn,
Yeah.
like it's testing.
Uh-huh. It's Nell's belief is that like by shouting we've let it know we're in here. That's how it knows. I shouldn't have been shouting. I shouldn't have been
Yeah.
screaming. And then it kind of goes away, and then we just hear shouting and laughing, like kind of a
Yeah.
cackly laugh, distant.
And almost like
Nell,
I think I heard like the sound of horse hooves like
mm-hmm.
at one point.
Nell finally swings the door open as the sound has gone away, and then just right outside the room are Luke and John. And they're like, "Where the fuck have you two been?" And they were like, "We were Oh, there was also at the door, right before this, you can hear the sound of sniffing along the edge of the door
Okay.
like a wild animal or a dog. Um,
Ghost
and
dog.
ghost dog. So when they open the door and catch Luke and John, they were like, "We were off chasing a dog, some type of creature that
But
was
they don't
running
even,
through
but
the
here's the
halls."
thing, nobody sees anything in this
No.
movie. It's like I heard something at my door that sounded like a dog. So me and Luke over here just ran off into the garden chasing after a dog that we don't even know if it was there or not.
Yeah, but they could hear it the whole way. And John says, I think maybe the house is trying to separate us because we were not able to hear the pounding
Mm.
on your door. The next morning, Nell gets down to breakfast and is sitting with John. It's like, please call me John, not Dr. Markaway. Sitting down there with John, and she's talking about her mother, and we get the backstory of her mother, and he's like, I really think maybe this is a bad time for you, and
Yeah,
like you don't. This is not required that you stay here. Like
yeah.
honestly, I can still do my research. You should take care of yourself, me time, all that. And she's like, no, you won't send me back. I have
I
no intention
belong
of
here.
leaving. Yeah.
I've been waiting for this house my whole life. I've been waiting for something interesting to happen to me my whole life, and it is this house.
Yeah.
I've always lived in the house.
they start talking about just fears and things like that in general, and then Theo comes downstairs and joins them, and I love this line because she was like, "What are you afraid of, Theo? Like, what is your fear?" And Theo, without breaking eye contact with Nell, says, "Of knowing what I really want."
Oh, mm-hmm. Yep.
Luke comes in, they're like, "What are you afraid of, Luke?" And Luke's like, "Whatever this shit in the hallway is, come look at this."
Yeah.
And they find written in chalk, "Help Eleanor come home," on the wall. Mm-mm.
This sends Eleanor over the edge.
Boy,
Just like,
she
it knows my
flips.
name. It knows my name. And understandably so.
Yeah.
What freaks me out is when like both Luke and Dr. John are like, look, it's written in chalk. And then they taste it. I don't know what chalk tastes like. What the fuck?
Yeah.
You don't taste chalk.
No.
Actually, Luke is like, it's chalk. And Dr. John tastes it. And he's like, or a chalk like substance.
That's not necessary.
What?
Captain Obvious, shut up. Yeah.
What? What, like bone dust or flour? What are you talking about?
It's so interesting. I love this like person this character the characterization of Nell is so interesting because there's a lot about her wanting to be part of a group of people,
Yeah.
but she's also afraid of any attention put on her. But while she's afraid of being the center of attention, she constantly draws all attention to
Yeah.
her through her
Yeah.
behavior
Oh my
because
God.
she,
Theo's like, you always are doing shit that you have to be the center of attention. And she's
yeah,
like, what? No, no. And then she's off dancing and twirling around or,
yeah,
you know, monologuing about mother
yeah,
or refusing to monologue about mother after bringing mother up. And everybody's like,
yeah,
what? What were you going to say?
yeah.
Say it. Say it.
The movie does a little bit more of a tighter ending for what happens that, that gets her to leave the house. But in the book, it really clearly does a thing where she's just off doing her own thing and just ends
Yeah.
up causing a scene and endangering people. And they're like, you have to leave. Like
Yeah.
we're tired of your shit and it's not
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
entirely your fault,
Yeah.
but you can't be here.
Yeah.
And yeah, I find that really fascinating. One of the first things she does that first night is when she goes upstairs, she just screams and has a moment.
Yeah.
Well, this is now Nell and Theo start getting at each other.
Yeah.
Because Theo's like, it knows all of our names.
Yeah.
And then Nell blames Theo for writing it. I'm sorry. Nell blames Theo. She was like,
Yeah.
maybe you wrote it. Maybe you're just trying to freak me out. Oh, I bet you were just mad because we were supposed to have breakfast together and I was having breakfast with John. Are you mad that I broke our date? And I'm like, oh, don't like
And you can see
this.
Theo just being like, okay, this is not my first time at this rodeo here.
Yeah. She says, you're way out, baby.
I know,
I
I love it.
love
So
this.
60s, so
So
beatnik.
60s. Yeah.
Oh man, I love it.
And then during all of this fighting, because then, Theo's like, well, maybe you did it. You're the one always
Yeah,
drawing attention to yourself.
right?
In the background, Mrs. Dudley is like, it is breakfast was served at 9. My shift is done at 10. I leave at 10. I will be gone. I will
Yeah.
live in town where no one can hear you scream and no one can.
Yeah, I know, right? It is
And
10
John's
o'clock.
like, will you shut up for 1 second?
Oh, it's so good. I think Shirley Jackson is one of those authors in which people ask questions of other characters and no question ever gets answered.
Uh-huh.
She's one of those masters where everybody's always asking questions and nothing ever gets answered directly.
No, no. Yeah, it's all very, very, very tense between Theo and Nell.
Yeah, it's a bit of a
Because
hard breakfast here.
yeah, and I
Oh,
think one read on Theo is that she's hard. She's a hard person.
yeah,
She's direct and she's honest. But also the other thing is she's psychic. She knows everything that person is
yeah.
thinking, probably whether she wants to or not. So she calls
Right.
people on their bullshit.
She has that like the curse of the empathetic
Yeah.
is that she's like, oh my God, I gotta like wear this psychic energy next to me. And I really love this moment, kind of Nell and Theo are going at it over this loopy doop writing in the hallway. And Dr. John is like, don't you see what Theo's doing? She's trying to make you angry so you don't feel scared anymore. And you can actually
Mm.
see Theo go, duh, I'm trying to help you, girl. And you can actually see Eleanor begin to feel that of like, we are trying to help you. And it's a really beautiful moment. It's very quick and very subtle, but it just goes to show that there is like some kind of bond there.
Yeah. I think that's a good call. I think that's really great. It's such a good moment. They next go to the garden where we see the statue of it's
This
supposed to
fucking
be Saint
statue.
Francis curing the lepers,
Uh,
but Luke is like, actually, I've been told it was commissioned by Hugh Crane and it's a composite, and it does look like Hugh's face on the
yeah.
statue.
And it looks angry.
Yes.
I always think of
So
St. Francis as being very gentle.
so there's a man at the center in robes like a saint, like a padre, whatever, and he's flanked by two women
Yeah. He's kind of
and
surrounded by women. Yeah.
a dog and a child. And then there is a third figure standing behind one of the women.
Hmm.
And they were like, maybe that was the young companion of Abigail.
But also, doesn't it look just like you, Eleanor?
Ugh, man.
And it
Oh,
does.
it does. It does look a lot like Eleanor. There's a moment where I didn't write down what he says, but Luke makes a really disgusting pass at Theo.
Oh, yeah.
And she's just like, absolutely not. Just like hand out. Just very, very easy.
Well, it's like he's like picking on her, like he's like touching her sweater and her necklace, and she literally just goes, "No,
Uh-huh.
off, goodbye."
Nell, then this is the first time we see Nell dancing around the statue because she
Yeah,
says it looks like a statue you dance around. They're like, why don't you dance? She's like, all right. And she starts twirl dancing.
yeah, sort of
And
like Stevie Nicks
yes,
dancing,
uh-huh.
but not for long because a fucking door blows open and scares everybody.
Yep. Now we're off to the library.
Yep.
And so the tower of the house, this is the ivory tower. So it's the
Hmm.
tall library tower where there's a giant spiral staircase that goes all the way up to the top window. But as they go in, Nell is like, oh, the
Cannot.
smell cannot
Yeah.
be in there.
And
And
they're
no one
like,
else can
"Oh,
smell it.
it's yeah." They're like, "Well, it's kind of dusty and musty, and clearly it kind of reminds you of the smell of your mother's sick room."
Hmm. And Luke, the student, like we learned that he's off in college somewhere or
Hmm.
whatever, is very familiar with the smell of a musty library. He's like,
Sure.
oh, it smells sweet to me.
Well, he also says it smells like money. I
Yes,
mean, he
because I
doesn't
could.
say it, but he's like at 25 cents a book. Like he's
Yeah,
still thinking like this is my inheritance. Like everything in here is quantifiable
you're right.
for
You're
me,
right.
which I love. I love Dr. John. Like if Eleanor and Theodora are kind of opposites on a spectrum, Dr. John is like pure science research. I just want to explore the unknown for the good of humanity. And Luke is like, I want money.
Uh huh.
Me.
Yep.
Like, not in a bad way, but in a very practical way. Like, no, I own this. I'm going to inherit this one day.
They're two very strong patriarchal forces of
Yeah.
capitalism and academia
Yeah.
happening between these two men. So Nell steps outside. Oh, Luke starts commenting about how he wants to turn the room into a nightclub. He's like, can you imagine dancers on this
Yeah.
stairwell? And that spiral staircase starts shaking and he
Uh
jumps
huh.
off. Yeah, he's like, fuck this. Outside, Nell is staring at the tower of the ivory tower, being like, "This is
She's
wild."
off inner monologuing.
Yep. She imagines what it would be like to be up in that very top window, like the caretaker was
Yeah.
when she hung
She's like,
herself.
that's where she was.
Hmm.
She was right there. I could see it.
And it causes her to faint. And just as she faints, John catches her and is like, "Where have you been? We've been calling you." And he really, really, again, pleads the case of you should probably head back
Yeah.
home.
Yeah. Maybe. Well, and he says not only that, but it's like I'm a scientist. I do all this research. I have my research assistants, you three. And if it comes out that any of you were having some sort of, if any of this is in your head, if there's any question about your mental sanity, then it negates my research.
Yeah.
So it's not good for me. It's not good for you. But they end up in kind of this, they're clearly in an embrace of some sort because he just saved her from toppling over the railing.
Uh-huh.
But this is also, and it's also important to note that this is the same location where the companion was with her lover
Yeah, you're right.
when the old woman was knocking at the wall. So there is this kind of like this is the romance, the illicit romance
Yeah. This is the
corridor
veranda.
out here.
Yeah, you're
Yeah.
totally right. He's like, all right, okay, if you're staying, he was like, then uh Theo,
Button up.
I think you should move in with Nell so the two of you aren't alone. And Theo, without batting an eyelash, just goes, you're the doctor.
Love her. Oh my God, she's the
And
fucking best.
Nell is protesting she wants her own room, but Theo's like, oh, we'll have fun. Like sisters.
Yep. And we'll do each other's nails.
They paint toenails and drink brandy and
Oh my
giggle and
God.
laugh. Yep. So this is the conversation around like, what's your apartment like? She asks
Oh
Theo, like, what's your
yeah.
apartment like? She says, well, we fixed it up with things from the junk shop, and it's very bohemian sounding.
Yeah.
And she's like, are you married? And Theo pauses and goes, no.
No.
And then she says, tell me about where you live. And we hear a story that is completely made up from Nell. I have my
She's
own
like, it's a little
apartment.
house. It's
Yeah.
just a little place.
I've got a
I
little
mean, I'm sure your
stone
place is
lion.
much nicer. Yeah.
Mhm. Yeah, she takes the stone lion she saw earlier and then says, like, I bought little stone lions to go on the mantle of my apartment. They were
This is
perfect.
another Shirley Jackson thing. This idea of like totems. Have you noticed
Mm,
this in her short stories? There's the idea of
sure.
like little totems that go as like objects of art that you put around your house for protection or for status.
Uh-huh.
I don't know. I've just noticed this a couple of times of like the little objects that we surround ourselves with often tell us about who we are as
Right.
people. And I find it interesting that, when she saw these stone lions, they were guarding, like outside the gate of like a pretty fucking nice New England mansion.
Hmm.
But in her mind, they're sort of shrunk down to the size of like just to fit on the mantelpiece,
Yeah.
but still a lie.
Again, Theo with her incredible lines says, well, I feel like I should get you back to your apartment as soon as possible.
Yeah.
But she hears this. Nell freaks out at this because, again, it's like suggesting she should go home.
Yeah.
And she doesn't want to leave the house and she snaps at Theo. So John calls them all out because he's like, I found this like crazy spot right in front of the nursery doors where there's this huge draft. But the draft is impossible because solid floors, solid walls,
Yeah.
all
Yeah.
the
Yeah.
doors are closed. And then he tells them all we cannot go into the nursery. Like that's the lid on the pressure cooker of this
Yeah.
house.
This is the nursery. This is where Abigail lived, died for whatever reason.
Yeah.
This is the heart of the house.
Yeah. Late at night, Nell wakes up to so we had seen her and Theo go to bed. Their beds are just little twin single beds, like right next to each other.
Yeah.
We see them go to bed, but then late at night, we see a close up on Nell's face, and she can hear voices next door in what was Theo's room from before. But like
Yeah.
in the next door room, she hears a man talking. She hears a woman laughing. There's the
A
camera,
child crying.
then a child crying, but the camera zooms in on this. There's this like elaborate carved leaves on the
Yeah.
walls of this room, and it zooms in on this carved pattern. And the shadows and the way it's cut looks like a face. It's
It looks like a
so
face
good.
that's a very unhappy face.
Hmm.
And it's not only a man's voice, it's like a man's voice preaching. Like it sounds like it's intoning words that
Uh-huh.
you can't quite make out, but it definitely sounds like creepy preacher.
Yeah. And Nell is like, hold my hand, Theo, hold my hand and don't scream. Don't let them know we're in here. And she's kind of
Yeah.
talking to Theo. And she's like, Theo, that hurts. You're breaking my hand. You're holding it so tight. And then she hears the little girl sobbing, and Nell's inner voice is like, it's hurting a child. I won't let it hurt a child. And she screams, stop it. Wakes up. Theo wakes up. Nell is sleeping all the way across the room in the
Yeah.
chase.
Nowhere near Theo.
And she looks down at her hand and is like, who was holding my hand?
Oh,
That's
the
a good spook. Yeah.
spookiest.
Um, okay.
Day
So now
three.
we get the talk from John the next day in the parlor. We get the backstory about this is, the night my mother died. Nell says the night my mother died, she knocked on the wall and I didn't come. And he is like, you are human. Stop trying to
Yeah.
be a saint or a martyr. It is not your fault that your
Yeah.
mother died. You did not kill your mother.
You were
She's like, my
fucking
sister
tired
thinks I
of doing
did.
11 years of laundry and caretaking and
Uh-huh.
probably, it sounds like, with no help from anyone at all.
No. And no appreciation from your mother.
Yeah.
Luke finds Hugh's book, A Legacy for Abigail's Enlightenment and Education,
Ugh.
which is it's like
Lust.
yeah, it's mystical shit about lust and sin. There's pictures of serpents wrapping up people.
Lots of hellfire and damnation. And if you feel the touch of lust, you'll feel the fire of hell forever.
Uh-huh.
And
Theo,
I,
oh, go ahead. Go ahead.
I love Luke. Luke makes a joke of it. He's like, what if I took this and I clipped it up into season's greetings, Merry Christmas cards for all my family? Waka, waka, waka. Dr. John is like, put that goddamn thing away.
N- uh, Again, Nell has a really big freak out moment because she starts damning Hugh Crane to hell. She wants him to
Yeah.
spend eternity inside that book and then
Yeah.
burn in it in all of eternity. And she is like, I got this whole monologue. And Theo, doing her bit earlier, is like, you need to calm down.
Yeah.
And she's like, no, why don't you tell us about your apartment and
Oh,
the little
shit.
stone lions that you bought?
Mm-hmm.
Dr. Markaway, have you ever seen stone lions small enough to just fit on a mantle? Is that a thing? Is that even real?
Is it real, Eleanor?
And Nell says, you are the monster of Hill House, and storms out. And then we have the fight on the balcony, which is wherein, she calls Nell, Theo calls Nell, you poor, stupid innocent. And she said, I'd rather be innocent than like you.
Yeah.
What's that supposed to mean? Nature's mistakes, like you, for instance. Well, now we've said the thing.
Yeah.
We said it out loud, didn't we, Nell?
Yeah.
And Theo says, you are in love with John. You're in love with Dr. Markaway. And
He's married, right?
yeah, he's not available to you because that evening a car pulls up and Dr. Markaway's wife, Grace,
Oh,
pops in.
dear. Oh, Grace, Grace, Grace.
Having just reread the book. I'm so sorry to drag the book back into this, but Grace in the book is so much fun because
Oh,
she
really?
she is much more of a so if Dr. Montague in the book, Dr. Markaway here
Yeah.
if he's the academic anthropology professor
Okay.
studying these things, Grace is the parlor planchette woman. She's the one who
Okay.
brings the Ouija board. She's the one into mysticism and
Okay.
kind of like this early 20th century.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Like, remember
Table knocking and yeah, yeah, yeah.
yeah, people became fascinated with Ouija boards and
Oh,
seances in
yeah.
the 1920s.
Ectoplasm
Yeah.
and yeah, yeah, yeah.
And it still exists. And so that's how she is. Like, she's
Interesting.
another variation of kind of Theo, but a lot more like headscarf and candles everywhere
Yeah.
type of woman.
Versus
And,
this Grace is much more like um respectable housewife,
uh-huh.
doesn't want any like like Dr. Mark Weiss kind of explained that his father was a very respectable lawyer back in England. And when he decided not to go into law, he wanted to be unrespectable. He wanted to do anything that was unrespectable. And somehow he ended up into this profession. But you get that Grace kind of wished that he was a lawyer like
Uh-huh.
his father had. She wants him to be. It's a bit of George and Martha. It's a little bit of George and Martha here at this relationship. I could see it,
Yeah.
turning into later in their life.
Yeah,
But
she says she hates that he's wasting his life on this.
yeah,
I don't think she says
this
bunk,
ghost
but like
bullshit.
yeah, basically. She also is going to she wants her own room, and and
I
there's a
know, which is
moment where
quite a choice.
it is, and Nell, in a fit of anger because Theo's not wrong, like Nell is confusing her
Yeah,
all of her stuff with a love for John, because
yeah,
John is the true, she sees him as the true protective force, I think, maybe. I
yeah,
don't know. Hard to it's hard to analyze exactly what
yeah.
she's doing, but she's very mad that Grace has shown up. And she's like, well, no one's sleeping in the nursery. And they all kind of look at her like, bitch, can you chill?
Yeah,
Just so
because Grace is
easy.
like, what? There's no dungeons, spooky dungeons, or haunted live. What's the worst place in the house?
Nell's
The
like,
nursery. Well,
nursery.
that's right. I guess I'm stuck. Show me to the nursery, man.
It's Nell's personality is so much like a borderline personality disorder. There feels something very stunted about her
Mm,
development, her
yeah,
maturity in this. Sorry to pathologize it, but it's the but it is a thing where like she acts like a child and she has to
yeah,
catch herself. And in this moment, she realized she acted like a child by being like, "Well, the nursery." And she runs to Grace being like, "I'm so sorry. I was making a bad joke. It was really inappropriate for me to say that. You should not stay in the nursery." And
it's locked
it's
anyway.
locked
So
anyway, and we don't have a key. And she's like, well, look, the door's open. I guess I can stay in the nursery after all. John's like, you can't stay in here alone. And she's like, I'm good. Good night. Shuts the door.
I know, right? What is this marriage?
Very interesting. It's funny because, like, I do think it is combining the dynamic of them sleeping apart in the book with here,
Yeah, yeah,
but
yeah,
Grace is much more of like, she does feel a little bit more like upright housewife, upstanding housewife.
yeah, yeah, yeah,
But it is weird that she wants to sleep alone in the house.
yeah.
Uh, yeah, it's very interesting. Anyways, well,
Later
that's
that
what's going to
night.
happen. Yeah, yep. Well, so now we see actually John kind of gets a little bit more security minded. So he's like, we're all
Yes.
sleeping downstairs. We are all keeping watch. We will take shifts.
Yep.
Luke, you
We're going to
start.
sleep in this room, and somebody's got to be upstairs, kind of guarding the hallways.
Yes.
I love
Especially,
this scene. This
yeah.
scene is spooky as fuck because it starts by the fire and it sort
Mhm.
of pans over, and we see Theodora and Eleanor kind of curled up on the sofa. Well, Theodora's on the sofa. Eleanor's sort of got her head in Theo's lap, again, very childlike.
Mhm.
Dr. Markaway is asleep in a chair. And then we see like Luke come in, and it's just so creepy. Like he's like moving really slowly, silently, shines the flashlight at the camera,
Uh-huh.
grabs the bottle of booze. Okay.
Yeah,
But like the way he enters that room is so ominous.
it is. Yeah.
And then it's, okay, back to the booze, grab some booze. And then the door slams shut.
Uh-huh.
Everybody wakes up. And then all hell breaks loose.
And
This
John's
scene,
like,
this
what?
scene is, I mean, this is classic. Like, this is what makes this horror movie one of the best show me without showing me horror movies ever made.
Because as Theo says, well, we've seen this show before because the pounding is happening, but
Yeah.
this time, and we hear the pounding loudly on the door. We see the doorknob kind of moving, but differently this time. That door bows inward,
Yeah.
like it's made of rubber,
Yeah.
and it almost looks like it's breathing. Actually, at a
Yeah.
moment,
Mm-hmm.
at first I'm like, oh, something's gonna burst through the door. Then, the longer you stare at this door bulging, the more it looks like a lung.
Lungs. Yeah. I mean, it also reminds me of the idea of membranes between the natural and the supernatural.
Hmm.
The television in Poltergeist, the television in Videodrome, when Freddy kind of pushes
Yeah.
through the wall in Nightmare on Elm Street, this idea that there is a membrane between the natural and the supernatural, but that membrane is pushable,
Uh-huh.
you know?
Yeah. And it's organic. It makes the
Yeah,
house look
yeah.
organic for the first time.
Because we know that wood should not behave like that. And this is where like the character of Luke is such a great payoff because he, like you said, he drops that bottle and he's like, you want to buy a house?
For cheap. I'll sell
Yeah.
it to you for cheap.
Because the look in his face is like, I can't explain this. I'm witnessing this right now, and this is scaring the fuck out of me.
Uh-huh. But then the sound moves away finally, and they hear it moving toward the direction of the nursery. And John is like, I gotta get over there, save her. And they're all like, just
Don't
don't
go outside
don't
this
go
door.
out there. But meanwhile, Nell is having her own conversation. She's like,
She
this is
finds a side door.
mm-hmm,
She's
I'll
like, I got
come.
to go run around the house.
Whatever it wants of me, it can have. It wants me. It's gonna keep doing this till it
Yeah.
finds me, and I have to give myself to it. The camera work here is so good.
Oh
Like
my
she's trying
God.
to open a door, but the camera is like it's not just shaking, it's like seesawing with her
Yeah.
movement. So it looks like ship at sea almost. Like
Yeah.
it's kind of
Or it's
watching
like
this
when
even
she
on the
takes a
TV.
step back, it takes a step, but it's like a jerky movement. It's also, we've gone through this entire podcast and not talked about all the creepy stone statues and
Oh,
faces throughout
yes.
this house, which is kind of the idea of like these little cherubs. There's another one with like, kind of a woman with a veil over her, a marble statue of a veil.
Uh-huh.
I mean, Eleanor scares herself so many times with statues of fawns, statues of children. Everything is a face in this
Yeah.
house.
Yeah. Yeah, everything is a face in this house. Like there's so much there to that looks like it's looking at you, that's
Yeah.
watching your every movement.
The doorknob has a face on it, for
Yeah,
God's
you're right.
sake.
She starts feeling like the house is destroying itself and it's going to collapse
Yeah.
on her. She makes her way all the way to the nursery and it is doors open, no grace mark away inside at
Nope.
all. And they cannot find her one
Yep.
bit. They don't know where she is. They're looking for her and as they're shouting for grace and walking through the house and the property, Nell is just like, "Oh, let's go into the garden and start dancing around the statue."
Yeah. Time to do some pagan statue dancing.
And she's like, I want to stay here always, she tells the statue of Hugh Crane. Dio is telling the boys, you know, I think I'm done.
Yeah.
Let me
But
drive to, I'm going to take
maybe it's
Nell
time to
and I'm going
pack
to
it
get
up.
her out
Yeah.
of here and
Yeah.
I'm going to stop in town, call the
I'm going to call
police.
the
We'll get
police. Yeah.
people to look for Grace. I honestly shouldn't be here, which I'm
Hmm.
like, 100%. I am with you. You
Yeah.
are. I hope I am you if I'm ever in this situation.
Yeah.
But then they're like, well, where is Nell? Motherfucker. God damn
Hmm.
it. And she's in the goddamn library where it doesn't smell anymore.
No, it smells nice.
Yeah, it's not cold anymore.
No.
She's like, I've broken the spell of Hill House, and she is climbing up that spiral staircase that is
Forever.
bolts loosening. Yep.
Well, it's like she keeps climbing and climb, like, and it's this great shot of like we see her feet, her bare feet going up, and then it's from above, following her from above, and we realize she's only gone like 10 steps.
Yeah.
And then she climbs some more and she's gone like 13 steps. It's like it's a time space fuck, this staircase.
It goes on for a while. I think it's very effective because
Yeah.
it stretches that tension as long as it can, and I feel like it maximizes the tension it can stretch out of
Yeah.
this stairwell. But the way the camera looks up and down the
Mhm.
stairwell is so good. Well, they all they all show up, and John follows her up there, even though that thing is shaking and quaking.
Yeah.
and he meets her all the way up at the top, and he reaches out to her, and she like lurches backwards and almost falls
Yeah.
off the railing, and he pulls her close. And again, with the kind of romantic looking gestures and the way she's
Yeah. Like
looking
it's
at
like his
him.
touch brings her back to reality. Like he touches her face and that brings her back to her body.
Yeah. What is that called? Like trauma bonding, the way in which people become like really drawn. Is that what it
Sure.
is? Yeah. When you go through a really intense situation with
Yeah,
somebody, it
yeah,
can
yeah, yeah,
make
yeah.
you fall in love with them
Yeah, or a bond
or
at a deeper
bond.
level quicker
Yeah,
than what you would have expected.
totally. Well, they
They're
they
like, oh, ooh, okay, Nell is better.
yeah.
Thank goodness. Let's very carefully go down the staircase.
Uh-huh.
But jump scare, Grace's pale Tower of London, Tower of Terror face
Uh-huh.
pokes out of some hole in the ceiling. Fade to black.
Yeah. So we know that seeing Grace's face in the ceiling trapdoor, which is what is
Yeah.
that? I guess. I don't know.
The attic, like there's
I
there's
guess
some sort of
must
like
be.
Eve's attic kind of space.
But it caused Nell to faint, but no one else saw it.
Yes.
No one else saw Grace pop out of that thing. Um, they're very much like, it's time for you to go,
You
Nell.
gotta go. They're like,
And
and she's like, no, 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 I want to stay. I want to be part of something bigger than me. They're like, you are getting into this goddamn car.
and you need to go get help, and that is not
Yeah.
on us to get you that help, but we
Yeah.
encourage you to do so.
Yeah.
And she also is not just like, I'm supposed to stay here. She's like, I'm supposed to stay here, and now I fucked up
I,
because Grace took my place. I'm
yeah.
supposed to be in that job, not her.
Yeah. I'm supposed to be lost in the house forever, dancing around my bare feet like
Mm-hmm.
Stevie Nicks in a tower of terror.
Yeah. And she confesses to them too that like, because John is like, you have your new apartment. Your mother just died. You just got a new apartment. She's like, I don't.
I live with my
I
sister. Yeah.
I everything I own is in that suitcase in that car. My plan was never to go home again. I don't have a home. And I have to stay here. The house wants me. And if I stay, I can call Mrs. Markaway back to you. Like you want me to stay. I could be
Mhm.
very useful. And they're like, no. As a matter of fact, let's start the car for you. You remember which
Yeah.
pedal is which. You're
Yeah.
good to go. Headlights on, seatbelt
Yeah. And
on.
she's like, I'll
Nice.
drive. It's my car. I'll drive. She's like, okay.
All
Oh,
right.
wait, we need the key for the gate.
Mm-hmm.
So Luke gets out of the car, to go get the key for the gate, and Eleanor is off like a shot.
Yep. She yeah, she is off like a shot, and she is driving very fast around those curves, and she's like, I can, Hill House means for me to stay. They can't send me away. Um and then she lets go of the steering wheel and she can see it driving itself.
Yeah. Well, I kind of thought it was like she had her hands on the steering wheel and it's like pulling it to the side.
Yeah.
A little bit of
Oh,
both.
yeah. Yeah,
Little
she
bit
can
of
feel it moving, but when she removes her hand, she can see the steering
oh
wheel
yeah, yeah. Yeah,
moving
but it's
itself.
definitely like and I think, later Dr. John is or Luke or Dr. John is like, yeah, something else was driving that car.
Yeah. Um and then at this moment she starts having the realization of this thing wants me dead.
Yeah.
So it's I think one of the more disturbing moments, more upsetting moments in this whole film is this scene because she becomes aware that this is how the house does it to you.
Yeah.
And
Like
she's
it's the romantic idea of I will be part of this house forever, but the way to be part of the house forever is to die.
it drives her. It takes she
Yeah.
is like, please no, stop, and she has to the only thing she can really tell herself is like, at last it's really happening to me.
Yeah.
Like something in my life is happening, but the last second she realizes I don't want this.
Yeah.
And it maybe I think the scariest image in this, like that's the most disturbing moment, followed by the
Right.
scariest image, because as her
Oh yeah.
headlights go right into the tree, we see just like a figure in all white dash behind the tree.
like this is it's you're right, it's so creepy because it's very unexpected. It
Hmm.
reminds me, like, you see the movie Signs, like
Yes.
the lead up to that, of the like the that scene in Signs, that unexpected kind of figure walking in the woods,
Uh-huh.
but it's this sort of luminescent white nightgown kind of figure.
Yeah.
Didn't see that coming,
Yeah.
because
Nope.
we're so worried about like the ghost car trying to kill her, that fuck, that there's a whole other thing out there
Yeah. And
right
they
into that
go,
tree.
yep, she goes right into that tree, and John pronounces her dead. And as you said, like he's like, yeah, the card did something, did this to
Yeah,
her. Like she wasn't going to do that. And also if you'll notice, this is the tree that
the exact
Ukraine's first
same
wife.
tree
Yep. And then
90 years ago.
and then Grace the pauper shows up.
She just comes wandering out of the woods.
This explanation, I think you can put it under the umbrella of you don't know what you're doing when the house controls you.
Yeah, yeah,
But
yeah,
she
yeah.
tries to explain herself.
Yeah.
She's like, I wasn't trying to frighten her when I opened the attic door. I was trying to get your attention. Didn't you see me? And I'm like, if you were trying to get his attention, why didn't you just be like, John, I'm up here. Help
Yeah.
me.
As opposed to going,
Just at the one most emotionally fragile woman in the
yeah,
group.
mhm,
Yeah.
looking like a mannequin dropped from a ceiling.
She's like,
But
I
you know
don't
what?
even know how I got here. Don't
But they
even
all
know.
kind of like, listen, lady, we've spent enough time in this house. You didn't kill her. You didn't do anything wrong. This fucking house. Let's wrap it up and get it the fuck out of this place.
I used to love that PBS series with Bob Vila, This Fucking House.
This fucking
Yeah,
house.
this fucking
This old
house.
fucking house.
uh and Luke is like, poor Eleanor, and Theo says, maybe not poor Eleanor. Like
I know.
she wanted this. Like
Yeah.
maybe she is happier here. Maybe she got exactly what she wanted out of
She
this.
has a place,
Yeah.
which is I think that, Eleanor never had a place that she belonged.
Yeah. And Luke is like, I think I'm not even going to sell it. I think I'm going to burn it down and salt the earth.
I know, right? He said somebody should.
Somebody should. Oh yeah, maybe he is going to sell it and then recommend that's what they do.
Mm-hmm.
Woof. And then we kind of get the repeat of the opening paragraph, which is a device that the novel uses, which is a variation on the opening paragraph. I think it might, I forgot to check, but I think the novel might end with almost the exact same paragraph as
But
the
this time it's
opening.
in Eleanor's voice.
Uh-huh. And she says, Hill House has stood for 90 years and might stand for 90 more. And we who walk here walk alone. Credits.
The end. Spooky credits.
Oh, spooky credits.
I love those 60s typefaces. I really do.
Incredible. Shall we rate this film?
Yes, let's.
How approachable is this movie if you're horror film averse on a scale of 1 to 10, 1 being the least approachable and 10 being super approachable if you're squeamish about horror movies? I'd give the haunting. I'd give that 7 stone lions out of 10, right? It's not bloody at all. There are a few jump scares. It's the really scary stuff is in the sound design, in some of the creepy imagery. There, as we said, we don't ever see a ghost. We just kind of see and hear what it's doing. But I think this movie is really effective at being creepy and spooky and holding that tension. I think really the hard parts of this movie is and the content warnings here, just that you're dealing with suicide, dissociation, family trauma, all of that tied into the general haunted house
Yeah.
creepiness. So yeah, heads up about those things. But yeah, I think if you generally are like, oh, horror movies too scary, I think this is a rock solid, classy Criterion Collection level uh, uh haunted house film. As a horror film, to speak nothing of Approachability, Cecil, how do you rate this movie?
As a horror film, this one is quite good.
Mm-hmm.
It's rated G, like
As
it,
all
it's
those old movies used to be, I guess. Yeah.
it's rated G. And it's also like, I think Martin Scorsese said that this is like one of his favorite horror films. And you can see a lot of this idea of what you don't see is sometimes more effective in the use of camera work in the Evil Dead, the sounds, the movement, and using architecture of space as something horrible without
Uh-huh.
showing you spooky skeletons or people, like the usual haunted house fare. So for that reason, I think this is a pretty classy one. I mean, I love Julie Harris. Julie Harris is amazing.
Uh-huh.
And the whole cast is very, very good. And it's one of those movies that even though it was made in the 60s, it still feels very modern in its characterizations because I don't know, it gives you complete characters.
Yeah.
Like it's not like I'm an evil mustache twirling man who wants to trap people in a house overnight, kind of like Vincent Price, The Haunting of Hill House, or what is it, the House on Haunted Hill.
Yeah.
This is the respectable version of that.
Yes, totally.
I still think that The Innocents might be like a little. If you like The Innocents, you'll like this.
Oh,
So for that
totally.
reason, yeah, I think 7 out of 10. Um, 7 out of 10 creepy child staircases.
Ugh. All right, let's figure out what movie we're gonna watch next. You've got a scare die. I've got a style die. We'll roll those up and see what movie fits those two things. So on your scare die, Cecil, if you roll a one, our next movie's scare is magic with a K. Two, a giant blank. Three, a psycho killer. Four, Mother Earth. Five, conspiracy. Or six, aliens. What's our scare?
Two.
Got that two. We're gonna do a giant fucking blank. Wow.
We put
All
it on the
right, we can
dice.
put
We
that on
take it
that
off
die.
the dice.
Yeah. All right, so we're gonna match up your giant blank with the style that I roll. If I roll a one, it's got to be a European horror film. Two, a prestige horror film. Three, wild card, whatever giant fucking blank we want. Four, WTF, like something wild bonkers horror film. Five, something from the 1960s. Or six, an urban horror film, something in a city. So what do we got here? I have a one. We have Euro Scare and Giant Blank.
Okay. All right. Maybe not one of the stronger combinations we could have picked, but we
Well,
have a
we've got
few
we've got two on our list that I think match that pretty
that are both,
well.
I
That
think I'm quite happy with our two.
hmm We have also got a Letterboxd account where Random Horror 9 on Letterboxd. If you join Letterboxd, it's a free service. You can follow our lists, and we keep lists of all of the possible die roll matchups, and you can add comments to help us pick good movies. So you're not just limited to our imaginations about what movies fit these things. So let's talk about the two movies. I think you should tell us the two movies we put on here, Cecil, because I know one is one you've wanted to see.
The first one is called Prey,
Mm-hmm.
uh, which is a movie about a zoo veterinarian gets caught in a grisly adventure. She finds herself leading a citywide hunt for a monstrous lion terrorizing the Dutch capital of Amsterdam. I don't know why I've been obsessed with watching this movie. It just sounds so like a lion in Amsterdam. These are two flavors that I would not think would go together, but I'm very curious about them.
Uh-huh.
And then we have another film that I think you put on here. This is a really good one that I have seen called Troll Hunter.
Uh-huh.
A group of students investigate a series of mysterious bear killings, but they learn that there's much more dangerous things going on. And follow they follow a mysterious hunter and they learn that he's a troll hunter. This is definitely kind of a mockumentary style of horror, but it's quite good.
Interesting. Yeah, I've heard about Troll Hunter for a long time, and we're about to find out that it's a big fan favorite, at least
Oh,
through our
yes.
letterbox
We
followers.
have a seconding, a thirding, a fourthing.
Yeah. Den Dweller seconds it. Weaponized Toaster thirds it. King and Commoner fourths it. BGH is all aboard
All
the
aboard the whole
Troll
troll hunter
Hunter.
train.
Pulsating Mass, all aboard Troll Hunter. So we are going to be up against some popularity
Okay, that's cool. That's
things,
cool.
but good to know.
But let's see what else what y'all recommended for Giant Blank and Euro, though.
Spunky Bloss says Grabbers from 2012. This is an Irish UK co-production. So not in the
Okay.
spirit of like definitely in by the letter law, this is definitely European, but also not not foreign language. I don't know if we give bonus points if something is a foreign language country, but
It's
this looks
Euro.
like
It's Euro.
it is Euro. It's
Oh
totally
dear. But this
this
looks
is
very silly.
like giant graboid tentacle
Yeah,
monsters attacking
blood-sucking
Ireland.
aliens,
Yeah.
lots of tentacles.
Uh King and Commoner throws out Troll from 2022. Deep in the Dovra Mountains, something giant wakes up after 1,000 years in captivity. The creature destroys everything in its path and quickly approaches Oslo.
Uh-oh.
Oh, Norway and their trolls, because isn't it troll?
Listen, they do be loving trolls. They really
Okay,
do.
why not? Oh, troll. That looks that looks really intense. Okay, I like a giant troll movie. What else do we have on here? Cecil, we've got.
Let's see, Troll Hunter. Okay, Fifth Hammer recommends Reptilicus from
Hmm.
1961. A portion of the tail of a giant prehistoric reptile is discovered in Denmark. It regenerates into the entire creature, which proceeds to destroy buildings, property, and generally made a nuisance of itself. It can fly, swim, walk, and has impenetrable scales, which make it very difficult to kill. Reptilicus.
Okay, so this is a Danish Godzilla, right?
Yep. Which I kind of like the idea of that.
Uh-huh. Pulsating
Oh,
mass gives us
Reptilicus. Wow. One, it's got an awesome poster.
okay,
Oh my gosh, this looks very silly.
pulling this
Yeah,
up
it
now.
looks like
Oh, that's a dragon destroying the Golden Gate Bridge. Is what
yep,
that looks like on
but
the
it also
cover.
takes place in Denmark.
Uh-huh.
Okay, sure.
Uh,
Let's see. Pulsating mass also jumps on the Troll Hunter train,
uh-huh.
but wanted to add the movie Gorgo from 1961. Oh, the 60s and their giant monsters,
Uh-huh.
which is basically England's attempt at making a Godzilla. So we have a Danish Reptilicus, we have
Uh-huh.
a British Gorgo. Let's see here. Wind Dancing recommends Rawhead Rex. An ancient culture called Rawhead is awakened from a slumber near an Irish village and goes on a rampage, killing anyone in sight. Ancient creature, not an ancient culture. That made no sense. Sorry about
Uh-huh.
that. I was like, what am I reading here? Rawhead Rex.
That sounds really fascinating. I like the title.
Oh, Rawhead Rex looks like a monster troll.
Okay.
Like, think Pumpkinhead troll.
Yeah. It's got a little bit of critters to the face
Yeah.
too. Yeah.
Uh-huh.
Okay.
Uh-huh.
All right. That's
Ray Baxter recommends Branded from 2012. Max von Sydow, love him,
mm,
is an evil ad executive using fast food commercials to fatten humanity up for aliens who hover like bloated Macy's parade balloons over a near future Moscow.
whoa.
Okay.
That sounds ridiculous.
Well, it kind of sounds like the movie The Stuff meets They Live.
Yeah. Oh, the poster is wild looking. It's got a little bit of like almost like Attack on Titan.
Yeah.
Um
And finally, Ganymede's Cup recommends Under Paris 2024, a French disaster film. Uh, let's see, from Xavier Jean, starring Bernice Bejo. To save Paris from a bloodbath, a grieving scientist is forced to face her tragic past when a giant shark appears in the Seine. So we've got a giant shark attacking Paris. We've got a giant lion attacking Amsterdam.
uh-huh. Well,
Um,
that shark's gonna get E. coli anyway from the Seine. Yeah.
yeah. And have a poem written about it by a busker. Let's see here. I mean, here's the thing, Jeffrey.
Yes.
Troll Hunter's a really good pick.
Yeah.
Like it's a fan favorite and it's rightfully so. Like
Yeah.
it's scary, it's funny. Like do you remember One Cut of the Dead? Like One Cut of the Dead is to zombie movies what Troll Hunter is to monster movies. You know?
Oh,
Like it
okay.
knows what it is, it knows what it's doing and it does it very well.
It's Norwegian as well. It's also kind of documentary or found footage
Yeah.
style, which I think is really cool as well. Yeah, it does feel like so clearly the number one
Yeah.
film of all of
I
these.
mean,
Some of these sound really good,
like
but
Reptilicus sounds like an amazing movie to like smoke a joint and watch.
I feel like we could do, because we do horror shorts reviews on Halloween's and Friday the 13th,
Yeah.
but I feel like we could almost do like a sidebar of just Godzilla ripoffs.
Godzilla
Like it
ripoffs.
sounds like there's a lot of them.
Quite a few.
Mm-hmm.
But no,
Okay, let's do
I
Troll
think Troll
Hunter,
Hunter
right?
is the way to go.
Yeah. It's on Prime as well. It's all over the place. You'll be able to find this very easily. So all right, well, let's do Troll Hunter from 2010 from Norway. Thank you all for listening. Thank you, Cecil, for talking with me. And if you have thoughts on The Haunting or ideas for other movies that would have been good, Giant Blank meets Euro Scare, then let us know on Instagram at Random Horror 9 or on Patreon, where we have public discussion threads for each episode. And you do not need to be a paying member to participate in those. And watch Troll Hunter from 2010 with us this week. And come on back next Tuesday for a new episode. Have a restful night with no ghosts stinking up your library or nothing. Boo.
Boo.